I think when you actually study the experience and history of communism in the proper context, you will find that, well, for one, there's a historical tension between communism and religion, but that wasn't necessarily because communism is inherently anti-religious or even inherently atheist. It was because the religious establishments that communists were going up against in their respective countries were deeply rotten and corrupt to the core. They defended the interests of the very corrupt ruling class. And, many normal, ordinary religious-minded people could even see that within these very same religious establishments, you had utmost cynicism and hypocrisy. These people that were occupying these roles of religious power didn't actually even believe in it themselves. So there wasn't even really any authentic faith there themselves. And for that reason, communists had taken in the very beginning a negative stance toward religion. But as the experience of communism was able to mature more, especially now, I think a certain understanding has arrived at between communists internationally and religion, which allows for a communism that has room for faith. Not only does it have room for faith, but is actually able to rediscover itself in the history of the world's great faiths. Friedrich Engels, Marx's friend, if you don't know who he is, toward the end of his life, he wrote about how in the early stages of Christianity, you found pretty much a very striking parallel to the socialist and communistic movement in Europe, that the principles and values of Christianity are strikingly similar to those of the communists. I mean, the President Putin of Russia has pointed out that the Code of Communist Builders, which was the Soviet kind of like handbook for the Komsomol youth, he said all of these things are already to be found in the Bible. So around the world, especially in Russia with its Communist Party, and in Latin America and in the Middle East, and I hope in the United States, communism has not only been proven to be perfectly compatible with faith, but they appear to even complement each other, because from the perspective of the world's great religions, we can see the kind of corruption and decadence and inhumanity that capitalism has brought upon the peoples of the world, and the way in which this has to be addressed economically and politically seems to be very much compatible and similar to what the communists are saying, right?
This is a quote from Marx, the Communist Manifesto by Marx and Engels. Communism abolishes eternal truths. It abolishes all religion and all morality. Instead of constituting them on a new basis, it therefore acts in contradiction to all past historical experience. At root, is it not atheistic?
I wouldn't say so, because I think what Marx and Engels were trying to say in that regard is that communism doesn't mean to replace all of these things with a new religion and a new dogma and a kind of a new tradition. And I think that's very important to, keep in mind, because it's very easy to just assume that because you're having this new political movement and phenomena, that it's going to somehow make a new religion and make a new thing like that. And also, I think there's oftentimes a mistranslation as far as the word abolish is concerned in a lot of these texts. So oftentimes the word Aufhebung, which actually means sublate, which means to preserve while at the same time going beyond, is translated into abolish. And abolish means like to wipe out, right? And oftentimes Marx and Engels write about the sublation of things, which is not necessarily incompatible with their preservation in a new form, right? So the way I look at that and the way I would interpret that is that communists don't want to abolish Christianity. They just want to give a new ground for the expression of the authentic Christian faith without the corrupt religious institutions and establishments which deceive the people and trick people in the name of tapping into their real authentic faith, who are just motivated by cynical interests of serving those in power or serving special interests, or just plainly trying to scam people into making money.
I've seen reports that China, for example, as recently as last year, they were clamping down, I think, on Christians as well as some other religions like Falun Gong or something like that, and saying we need Marxism, not religion, not Christianity.
In regards to the situation of religion within China, Christians are not being cracked down on China for their religious faith. Now, there are various cults, among them the Falun Gong, which is a cult. It's not really a historical or traditional religion. The Chinese government will crack down on those, but not simply because of, in the name of uploading Marxism versus religion. Now, Chinese society, you have to keep in mind, has historically not had the same relationship to religion that other societies do. The Chinese society has been mostly secular throughout its thousands of years of history, just in the sense that its way of relating to spirituality and religion, all those kinds of things, are done through the concrete bonds of civil society and statehood. So that's not really an innovation of communism. It's just been true for China's history at large. But otherwise, Christians are free to practice their faith openly and freely within China. And events like the Taiping Rebellion in the 19th century within China, which was a Christian religious uprising against the Qing dynasty, was obviously very influential in influencing the eventual communist movement that would come later. So I think there is an interesting relationship to Christianity there. But again, China is not a Christian country. China has seen profound cultural shifts. And specifically within the presidency of Xi Jinping, we're seeing more of a promotion of morality instead of the kind of unfettered economic growth for the sake of economic growth. There's more of a promotion of moral values and kind of cracking down on this kind of cynical dog-eat-dog society. Now, in regards to this cynicism that prevails within Armenia, you have to keep in mind that after the collapse of communism, when the very same forces that conservatives within America are trying to struggle against, basically engage in the wholesale privatization of the former Soviet countries, and pretty much looted them and destroyed their traditions and trying to destroy their culture and set up all these NGOs and things like that to promote a society that was more in line and more within the interests of the American deep state. Obviously, the situation in the post-communist states has been catastrophic, but this wasn't the fault of communists. It actually was the fault of the same global billionaires and the global capitalist class who are funding NGOs, people like George Soros, people like the Ford Foundation and the Rockefellers and all this kind of people who have they don't only have an agenda for the people of the United States and for this country, which I think to many Americans has been revealed. They had an agenda to completely overthrow the communist states and replace them with liberal democracies. And that has been an absolute disaster for traditions and for culture and for religion, so much so that in countries like Russia, you find the Communist Party to be fundamentally Orthodox Christian at its core. It's allied with the Orthodox Church because both recognize the forces of anti-communism to be a menace to religion within their country. It's not that communists are against God. It's just that we're reluctant to focus too much on it because it can very easily be twisted to serve the opposite. Now, the great religions of the world warn about this. They warn about how people do things in the name of God, say things in the name of God, while in reality serving Satan, right? You yourself pointed out earlier that, I forgot exactly what it said, but evil does disguise itself in the form of good. And as beautiful as I consider the great religions of the world, it's precisely because of how good, true, and beautiful that they are, that evil forces have used them for completely opposite purposes, right? So that explains really historically the reluctance of communists to really get really deep into the religion. But we saw in the Soviet Union how, for example, when the Germans invaded their country, they rediscovered the Russian Orthodox faith, this pure sense of faith, divorced from the institutional corruption of the church, which I think was a more authentic and real form of faith than the one that existed before communism, right? So we have to bear in mind, communism is not incompatible with religion. I think you can even go so far as to say that communists merely want to do good in the world. We don't want to make heaven on earth, but we want to be good people in this world. We don't only want to focus on the afterlife in heaven, because this world does matter. What we do in this world matters. If we didn't believe that, then how could we condemn and recognize the evil of what our elites are doing? We clearly see that this is evil because we know that what happens in this world matters.
I think that everybody sees evil, but they're not good at diagnosing it, nor are they good at coming up with the right solutions for it. They end up creating more evil. It's like an imitation of logic. Because Karl Marx himself said his Marxism cannot be conceived without atheism. And I think it's more than you're letting on. It's more.
Well, here's why. The reason there's confusion around this is because historically, religion had taken the form of philosophy in Marx's time, right? Marx wasn't thinking about religion beyond philosophy. And in the philosophical sense, Marx was an atheist. He did wholeheartedly reject religion. But that's because, in my view, the meaning of religion became perverted by philosophy, and what was once an authentic and material form of faith, right, just based in feeling and intuition and true faith and conviction, turned into dogma, and it turned into this kind of absolute guarantee that I view is inherently corrupt. But I don't think that you can reduce people's religious feelings to that. I think people's religious feelings is authentic. Marx also agreed it was authentic. Marx called religion the heart of a heartless world. He said religion was the only way people were able to give expression to their authentic humanity, right? Now, whether or not you believe that in building a more human world, religion is going to disappear, we can all agree that there is something fundamentally good about religion. Marx himself was making the point that the problem is not religion. The problem is our current world. And the evils that we associate with religion are a reflection of the evils of our world, right? So it's kind of more of a philosophical issue that shouldn't be taken as face value, because his historical experience shows, and this is especially true in 2021, that in no way is religion incompatible with communism. It's really, I guess, as a communist, it is embarrassing to see the type of communists that claim to represent what this tradition is. But that's why I'm trying to set a different example, and several others are trying to set a different example, so that communism won't be associated with that anymore. I do agree that the so-called self-proclaimed leftists and communists in America, in the main, the majority of them, especially the ones coming out of these universities and academia, they are fundamentally, morally, spiritually, however you want to put it, bankrupt people. They have no sense of honor. They have no sense of dignity. They have very slimy, tactics. I myself know this firsthand because I've been victim of them, right? I know how dishonest and inhuman and dishonorable these people truly are, right? I know that firsthand. But at the same time, the way I see that is it's the same reason why you see religions being corrupted, because to me, evil takes the form of good. It disguises itself as good. But I do fundamentally believe that at its core, communism is good. I just think evil people in this country specifically have been corrupting it for completely and wildly different ends. I did have issues with religion growing up, but I've come to a perspective where I have great respect and reverence for all of the world's major religions. And also I acquired, actually, as a communist, a newfound appreciation for Christianity and in particular, right? Because of how closely entwined communism historically has been with Christianity. So to me, I find beauty and truth in all of the world's great religions. We say all men are born equal, and yet some people live in chains and they're attempted to reduce to the status of cattle and animals. I think it's self-evident the way
we made them Christians. We they were
There
happier.
is nothing Christian about the institution of slavery. It's a mimicry of the pagan form.
It's irrelevant.
The pagan form of Roman slavery. The leaders of the Confederates were among the debauched, depraved, and decadent elites in history.
Some of them
had
were
nothing to do with Christianity.
They were more honorable than you or me.
Secretly, there you had the elements of paganism and complete anti-Christianity among them. This has nothing to do with Christianity whatsoever. The most fervent Christians at the time were fighting to free their fellow man from the bondage of slavery. John Brown was fundamentally religious.
A terrorist.
He was absolutely
an angry terrorist.